Good afternoon, and welcome to A Beer with the Old Growler. I'm Pete LaFrance, the Old Growler, and today is Monday, the 22nd of June, 2020, and this is the 66th Old Growler Live. And today, 97th day since we've had our pubs, bars, and taverns closed, and so, well, that's why I'm here. I figured that if I can't go out and have a beer at 5 o'clock, well, why don't I invite you folks in to have a beer with me? I'd appreciate everybody coming in and visiting. That's for sure. All right. Well, I didn't get a chance to go across to the Henry Street Ale House today to pick up a growler because they're closed. And so I had to go and get some Brooklyn beer myself. This time, instead of a growler, well, comes in a can. One of my favorites. One of my favorites. It's a 6 Point Bengali, and it's a nice little beer. And I'm going to crack one open as soon as it gets to be 5 o'clock. It's only 4:59 now. Okay, well, for those of you who are new here, welcome. For those of you who have been coming in here and visiting with the Old Growler for the last 3 months, welcome back. For those of you who haven't been here before, you know how the game is played. And for those of you who are new, here is how it goes. A little bit of an introduction with a beer from the Old Growler, wet my whistle, and then it's time to do a beer tasting. We do a beer tasting. It's fashioned after the way we used to do tastings over at the Henry Street Ale House, and I'll explain that in a few minutes. But then after that, well, if you're still hanging around, it's time to talk about what my life was and is like as a professional barfly. And essentially, I've been covering the beer industry and the hospitality industry for almost 40 years now. And so it's kind of disconcerting to have things closed down. No place to interview, nobody to interview except on the phone. And that's what I'm going to be talking about a little bit later is interviewing and the art of interviewing. So anybody wants to stay around, I'll tell you all about it. Okay, well, that's 5 o'clock on the nose, at least according to the computer. So it's time for me to crack open a beer, get started with a beer with the Old Growler. All right. Boy, it's hot out there today, too. Something like 88 or 90. Glad I'm inside. Sheltering in place. That's what it's called. I call it staying cool. Boy, I couldn't have got a bigger head on that one than I. Well, matches mine. I'll let it sit there for now. I'm not going to let it sit there. For those of you who are here today, cheers. Here's to you all. Oh, wow. Yes, sir. That is a good beer. All right. Well, I've explained very briefly how a beer with the Old Growler goes. And today we have, this is going to be our feature beer. In case you don't know, it's actually not a beer. We're friends in fermentation, though. And it's Samuel Smith's Organic Cider, all the way from Great Britain. It's one of their big selling. Not only is it organically grown, but it looks like here it's vegan and all kinds of good stuff. So we're going to see about that a little bit later. But first of all, let's see how the tasting goes. Here's how the tastings are run. What we do is we take a look, and this is from the tastings that we had at the Henry Street Ale House. Take a look at the playlist that says Tastings at the Henry Street Ale House or Henry Street Ale House Tastings, and you'll see that all of the tastings there that we've been doing. We used to go in on Thursdays at 2 in the afternoon in between services, and I'd bring a couple of beers. Most of the time it was beers that were sent to me by brewers. Sometimes I went out and bought one. But what we would do is we would take a look at the label on the beer bottle or the can, or every once in a while a spirit dropped in, and we would read it off just as if we were regular consumers and see what it said, and then what would we expect from that particular beer. And then Jerry Scott, the bartender and manager, would pour the beer, and myself and Jim Bennett, and always one or two other people, because it is a bar after all, and they were always customers, we'd have a sample and see if it meets expectations or if it met expectations. If it did, it got a thumbs up. If it didn't, it got a thumbs down. Okay, let's see here. What I'm drinking right now, the Bengali. It says beer is culture. It also notes that this is a year-round beer and 6 Point Brewery. It's 12 fluid ounces, 355 milliliters, 6.6% alcohol by volume, 66 IBUs, International Bittering Units, 9 SRMs. SRMs is a measurement of light or color, all the way from a very light straw, gold, all the way to a porter and a stout. And it says that this is an ale. It does tell me that it's an ale. It started. Let's see. It's sweat. It's doing, not sweating. It doesn't. People don't sweat. They do. It all started with an epic video game marathon back in 2004. Rocking Blaze Orange homebrew. We saw the foam rings down the glass like tiger stripes. Thousands of batches and tweaks later, the Bengali still slashes. Tip it back and let gravity do the rest. Game on. All right. See, please keep refrigerated. This ale is best served in a glass. Okay. There's the usual government warning, and it says formulated and brewed by 6 Point Brewery, Brooklyn, New York, Parksboro, Pennsylvania, and Downingtown, Pennsylvania. So they've got 3 breweries now. That's outstanding. So that was what we would do. We would take a look at that, and then Jerry would crack it open. And pour. And it certainly looks, smells, and tastes like good old ale. So that's going to be our standby right over there. Let's see. As I said, it's a hot day here in Brooklyn, New York. We're at the end of the Brooklyn Bridge, so it's been pretty quiet for the last day. And it's, as I say, our 97th day of no pubs, bars, taverns being open. Although today, for the first time, the New York restaurants, apparently, for those that can, are able to have tables outside. And some of the parking spots are being used as seating areas. I am looking forward to going and visiting one of my old haunts in Soho called Broome Street Bar and Grill. They have opened up tables on the outside, and I'm looking forward Wednesday to visiting. So I might take some video and post it next week, and that way you can see what it's like for New York City to open up again, or at least to start to open up again. All right. Let's see now. Here we go. We're going to have a beer tasting today to see if it meets expectations. Now, what do we have to taste today? Samuel Smith's Organic Cider, as I mentioned. So let's take a look at the label. It looks kind of farmhouse and kind of a traditional British type of organization of it, I guess it is. The typeface is certainly traditional, as you can see with the Samuel Smiths. Okay. Samuel Smith Organic Cider, produced from organically grown apples. Product of the United Kingdom. It's gluten-free and vegan and USDA organic. So our government got into that one. It says it's a cider, Cidre, 5% alcohol by volume, 14.9 fluid ounces, BPA free. The Soil Association says it's organic. It has, let's see, it says here, boy, it's got 188 calories, no fat, 10.4%, 10.4 milligrams of sodium, 12.7 total carbohydrates, 11.4 grams of sugar, 2.2 grams of protein, and it says ingredients are water, apple or organic apple juice, organic cane sugar, malic acid, yeast, carbon dioxide. And the only thing that has marked this as an asterisk here is that the water. And I don't, that might mean it's not organic. I don't know how water cannot be organic. But it's certified by all kinds of organizations. Let's see, Certifié biologique par l'association certification. Let's see, the produit par Samuel Smith's Brewery. And there's all kinds of good stuff here. So anyways, what are we expecting? Well, I have an idea of what British cider is like. And so, and it says that, well, it's a cider essentially. It doesn't have any bittering units in it, of course, because it's not a beer. So I'm just expecting a refreshing apple type of a snappy thing. Well, let's see what we've got. Once again, I bring my beer tasting glass in. It's exactly the same for all beers, so that way there's no shape difference, so that it accentuates any one of the flavors and or aromatics. So let's pour this in, see what we've got. Okay, wow, that is a sparkling. That's beautiful sparkling. It's got some nice carbonation. And yes, it's a cider. Yep. It's a little sweet for, well, ciders are supposed to be sweet. I think that's what it is that I was expecting a little bit drier. Maybe it has to do with the apples. Maybe the apples are different in the UK than they are here. Well, of course there are. There's thousands of different types of apples. But it's a refreshing drink. So does it meet expectations? Does Samuel Smith's organic cider, produced from organically grown apples, meet expectations? It certainly does. It gets a thumbs up. Mersey Beers, good evening to you, sir. And having a little something from the UK here. And I don't know how you feel about cider, but that's what we're tasting today. And it is a rather tasty little thing. I'm going to enjoy this just a little bit more, but let's take a look at what we're going to be sampling on Friday. The reason I say Friday is because, yes, since New York has opened up just a little bit, the Old Growler is going to be able to get out. And as I mentioned on Wednesday, going to visit a particular friendly pub that I like. And so I'm going to try and get out a little bit more, especially for interviewing, now that I can go and talk to some of the brewers in person, through a mask, but in person. So I'm going to be live on Mondays and Fridays, Mondays to start out the week, Fridays to finish it up. And in between will be beer tastings, and also on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and Wednesdays it will be essays from my life as a professional barfly. So that's the way the scheduling is going to be going. Okay, well, we're all friends in fermentation. I just got a note from Mersey Beers that there's multiple varieties of apples in the UK as well, and he's not a fan. But as I said, we're all friends in fermentation. And tomorrow, or Friday, we have another Samuel Smith, the Old Brewery in Tadcaster. Let's see, it's going to be the another organic, a pure brewed organic lager beer. So that's what we have to look forward to tasting on Friday. All right. Well, I'm going to have another taste of the cider here. Oh, that is kind of refreshing. It really is. Oh, wow. Well, for those of you who have stayed through the tasting, I appreciate it. I would really appreciate it, though, if you gave a thumbs up, subscribed, and clicked on the blue alarm bell down there. And that way you won't miss any of the postings that we'll be doing. And we'll still be doing postings every day at 5. It's just that on Mondays and Fridays will be live, and the other 3 days will be production numbers. So that's what to look forward to now with the Old Growler. I can read here. Mercy Beers says Samuel Smith is very traditional, so much so when they deliver casks locally, they do it with a horse and cart. Now that is traditional. Thanks for letting me know about that. That's really something interesting. I'll have to find out more about that. That's for sure. All right. Well, now comes the time for those of you who have lasted this long. I'm going to kind of go back over my life as a professional barfly. Now, a professional barfly is, I define it as someone who is a journalist of either media and either print or electronic media that has a good, a working, not only a working knowledge, but a professional knowledge of how pubs, bars, and taverns are run, as well as how breweries, distilleries, and wineries are run, how they make production, how they do their marketing, what they look for, how to judge a good wine, a good beer, a good bourbon. Not that it's what do I like or what do I don't like, it's how to judge what is a well-produced, well-made product. And all of that is what I think a professional barfly is. Again, Mercy Beers is chatting here with me. I've never seen their cans. Must be an import thing. Usually they do it in bottles. Yes, this is a new. In fact, the folks at Samuel Smith's sent this to me to have a good taste on it and let them know what I think of it in a can. It's remarkable that more and more beers are coming out in cans. It might be that the weight difference is important as far as shipping. It might be that it is better for the beer, actually, because it protects it from the light. However, temperature has another aspect of deteriorating beer. And so the can is a little bit less, is more susceptible to heat than a bottle is. However, a bottle, once you put a bottle, whether it's a brown bottle or a green bottle out in the sun, or it's caught out in the sun for some reason and isn't protected, that can really do a damn on the beer. So it's, and also I think production. Aluminum is probably less expensive than bottles, however, and both are recyclable. So that's one of the reasons I think that beers, particularly the small breweries here in the United States, the microbreweries and the brew pubs, are putting out beers in cans, large cans, 32-ounce crowlers, CROWLERS. And I think that is an interesting way of going forward. In fact, I can't show you, but I'll put a picture up there. I have a wall of beer here, beer bottles. There's at least 300 of them up on the wall, and they're all collecting dust and everything. But there's more and more beer cans coming in, and I'm going to have to take down a lot of these bottles and put them into storage or soak the labels off, take pictures, archive them, and then put the beer cans up there, because that is the way things are really changing. Mercy also says oxygen levels as well, which can be easily regulated. Yes, particularly in, oh, wow, I don't have one here, but we've done some tastings with a crowler from Randolph. And yes, the counter pressure when they seal the can is excellent as far as taking care of the quality of the beer. Tom, all things being equal, cans offer better protection against air ingress and oxidation. Yes, absolutely. I do believe, in fact, I remember seeing I will try and find the link, but in the mid 1950s in Arizona, I believe it was, they back when they used to like to test nuclear bombs and set them off, people in Las Vegas could take a look up at like 3 in the morning and see the sky light up. That was considered a lot of fun. And they tested cans of beer to see if they would survive a nuclear bomb, and they actually do. So yes, the can must really have a lot of protection there. Oh dear. Mercy, crowlers have been the savior of some local breweries that have never used small pack before. Exactly. And particularly now, here in the United States with the COVID-19 virus, it is really essential that some of the small breweries that can't keg and don't have a bottling line, that they can use the crowlers. And there are also mobile canning trucks that can be used. So it is a wonderful way of finding out how to adapt, adjust, and overcome. And the brewers that I know and the breweries that I know have had a real good sense of how to adapt, adjust, and overcome. And particularly small breweries, because they can change on a dime. So to speak, well, you can't get much from a dime actually if you're going to change it, but get change. But they can they can adjust. Where the larger breweries and the mid-range breweries have had a difficult time. Although I hear some of them, particularly on the West Coast, have been turning their beer into both hand sanitizers, and they've been doing some other very interesting things with beer that has been out of date and can't be, shouldn't be on the market. So there is, I guess, a silver lining to this in the fact that we are learning to adapt to some things that we never would have believed that we would have had to adapt to, and that's pretty remarkable. And back to the Bengali ale from Six Point, which is a Brooklyn. Oh no, a Brooklyn-based brewery, and I must remember to stay. We have 6 feet distance between people supposedly here to be safe. I've got to keep at least a foot and a half away from the computer so that the computer doesn't get thirsty. A couple weeks ago, my computer got thirsty, and it wasn't a good thing. All right, Dan Freeman, greetings, hola, salud. Oh, yes, that is a good beer. And I'm glad so many people are here today because beer is meant to be shared. And the Old Growler likes to share his beer, that's for sure. Within the next weeks or two, in July, let's see, July 4th is Saturday. Maybe, let's see, what do we got here? Greetings, Monica. Good to see you. Let's see, Friday the third, Friday the 3rd. We might have to do something special. Oh, and we have tasted a Fuller's Vintage Ale, 1999. And I believe we have one that goes back to 1996. So we might have to crack open another one of these. This was a real special one. In fact, brewmaster Jamie Gerardo sent me this as a gift, and it was a gift to him from the brewer who actually made it. So it is real history in a bottle, and I think we're going to have to crack it open to celebrate the more opening up of New York, and in fact, for the rest of the world, slowly but surely. If we don't celebrate, and again, that's part of beer, is celebration. And it's very important to celebrate things because if you don't, it loses a little bit of the effervescence of life. Mersey, let's see, Bengali had some nationwide release over here in the UK, though through the controversial pub chain called Wetherspoons. I wonder if Wetherspoons is a tied house or is well, since it has Bengali there, it must not be a tied house. It must be a free house. And I'm going to take a look. I'll Google it up to see what type of a place it is. If it's controversial, or it's a pub chain. I see there, not a pub chain. Peter, read the whole thing, please. Oh, that's very interesting. There are a series of pub chains here, at least 6 or 7 of them. There's a pizza. There's a couple that are run by, oh boy. I used to remember all the technical names, but I mean, all of the names of the organizations. Reese was one. Yum was another that ran. Again, after a beer, one's mind kind of wanders a little bit, so I can't remember all of them. But that's the great thing about Googling, or back in the old days, research books. You can look things up. journalists haven't. People say, well, as a beer person, as a beer journalist, ever covering the beer world for 40 years, you must know everything. I don't know everything, but I know where to find the answer to everything. Dan Freeman, real ales versus lager. Still some tips. Yes, absolutely. That's something interesting. A 1996 vintage ale. Whoa, that would fetch some serious money in the second hand. Yes, it would. In fact, Jamie Gerardo was on the tasting that I had for that. He was online with me, and he said that the bottles are worth something like $250 American. So that, yes, it's a pretty penny. And the thing about it is, in fact, let me show you another one I've got here. This one, this is a Ninkasi Sumerian beer, and it was brewed in 1989. And there's a couple of other real classics here. A Thomas Hardy from 1986. And the thing is I have, and amongst the wine people as well, when does a beer, when does this become a collector's item rather than a beer? Now, when I say a beer, I mean something to be enjoyed, to be opened up and to be enjoyed and shared, or experienced at least. Sometimes when they get this old, it's an experience. And that is the question that I am wrestling with, is when does this become a relic rather than a beer? And once it becomes a relic, it's pretty worthless as a beer when you come to think about it. So I think an empty bottle of this is much better than a full bottle. And I'm going to keep that in mind over the next month for sure. Again, on Mondays and Fridays are going to be the days. And so check the social media. I always post on Facebook and Twitter as to what the beer of the day is going to be. So keep an eye on that, and also click on the blue alert bell there so that you'll be able to not miss any of them. So that is a question. Let's see, Mercy, I struggle to age beers. Mine oldest is 2007 Orville. Wow, that's I would like to try that one. That would be interesting. One of the stories that I have about whether something becomes a relic, a collector's item, or a beer is from the world of wine, and we are friends in fermentation. A story goes, I remember it, at Sotheby's, they had a selection of Thomas Jefferson's wines from his wine cellar. And one of them in particular was very highly prized. I mean, we're talking 6-7 figures, something like that. And so it was brought in on a rolling dais type thing with a white cloth on it, and the bottle was right there, and it was rolled in, and the bidding started, and it was all worked up. Everybody got excited, and somebody won, of course. So it was bang, they win, and the attendant with the white gloves and the whole business goes over to the table and picks up the bottle of wine, and this part of the bottle stays there, but the bottom for some reason had fractured, and so the bottom stayed there, and the wine spilled all over the place. So not only was that wine not enjoyed, it wasn't enjoyed twice. So that's when a collector's item gets a little out of hand. Dan Freeman, I think I have a can of Budweiser that's about 20 years old. Someone left it. Yeah, that could possibly be. Yes, that's boy, I tell you, like an old can of Miller Lite would probably raise a good penny as well. But then that should be a collector's item rather than opened. That some things really shouldn't be opened. Not that it's bad, but some things just should be left alone. Oh boy, that's a tasty The Bengali is a tasty beer. I'm looking forward to trying the Samuel Smith's organic lager beer. That's a question I've got: is the organic lager, or how important? I mean, the fact that this is a small brewery, 6 Point Brewery, means that there is a certain price point that they can ask for that is markedly higher than the price point for, say, we just mentioned, of Budweiser or Rheingold or any of the others, popular priced beers. What is the difference? Now, there is quality, of course. There is the ingredients. There are the ingredients, of course. However, even this beer, to think that the beer in here cost them more than 3 or 4 cents, and that's just for the beer. Then we got to go for the design of the can. That's maybe $1.50. The can itself, 1 or 2 cents. Distribution, another dollar. 3 or 4 steps of people handling it, another dollar or two, and it starts to add up. Similar to in a restaurant, where you go to a restaurant and you figure, well, I've got a steak and a baked potato and some cream spinach. How much does all of this on the plate? I mean, it could come to maybe from the grocery store $10, but you're paying or less. You're paying 15 or 20 or 30. Why? What? Because there's the people that are there, there's the rent, there's the overhead, there's the staff, there's the context. Context is incredibly important, especially when it comes to beer, because you're working with flavors, perception. And that's why I consider myself a professional barfly, because all of these things come in to my focus of thought when it comes to looking at a beer, a particular beer, just this beer right here. And it's fun to be able to do that. It really is. And I've been lucky for the last 40 years or so to be able to do that. And every once in a while, though, it's good to stop and think about a beer. Look at it. What's the color? And to think of it not as beer, but simply as a beverage. What does it really taste like? When you're younger, beer tastes, and yet, well, by the time you get to be me, well, you're not going to be me, but by the time you get to be my age, this is incredibly tasty. Is it an age thing? I don't know. But that's why I'm a journalist. I always ask why. Always ask why. Which brings me to, oh, wow, it's 1/2 past. This one has taken a little while. I thank everybody for showing up, first off, and this has been a lot of fun, particularly talking about the different beers, and so many people here today. This is great. I'm enjoying this tremendously, and thank you all for showing up. And for those of you who are watching this later, comment down in the comments box. Let me know what you think of the fact that we're going to a 2-day format. I would really appreciate that, especially the content difference between a more relaxed presentation and some of the presentations that we've done over the last 3 months. Okay, Dan, I'm drinking a Flying Dog Double Dog. Well, that's got to be up there. I'm willing to bet 7.5 to 8, maybe. And let's see, Marzi, organic lager has been around for a long time. Craft lager scene in the UK is growing massively. Dan Freeman, 12%. Flying Dog, 12%. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. You're going to get ready for the evening, aren't you? Oh, wow. Fantastic. Yes, organic lager around for a long time. Craft lager scene in the UK is growing massively. Lager beer, yes, is well. This isn't quite the color of here we go for lager beer. That would be the typical color. And it amazes me because lager beer is so much more difficult to brew. It takes a longer time. First off, so you're going to have them in the fermentation tanks for a lot longer, and longer is costing you money. And also the technique is so much easier as a home brewer. I knew it was so much easier to brew a stout or a porter because you can make a few. If you're not quite on, you can get away with it. However, with a lager, you're dealing with such a thin margin of error as far as balance. It really is a challenge, and it's wonderful to see that it is happening in the UK. I'm going to have to start to. I have a sister-in-law that lives in London, and so I'm going to have to talk to her about possibly doing a little scouting work for me on this one, because I'd like to pick up a can or two of some of the interesting ones. Oh, for some reason, this Bengali is really hitting the spot, and I don't know why. And that's another interesting thing is why does a beer hit a particular one day you like that one, and then the next day it's not bad. I don't know. I guess it has to do with cravings of some sort and weather and ambiance. For lunch today, it was I had a craving for sardines, and not only that, but silled sardines, and managed to have some King Oscars. And oh wow, it was better than a steak. Shh, don't tell anybody. Mersey, some breweries here are brewing exclusively craft lagers. Examples such as, and I'm going to write this one down. It's DONZOKO. Donzuko. Wow, that's an interesting name for a lager, isn't it? The Donzuko. Boy, definitely. That's a well. You can never. There was the Bishop's Knees and the Mad Dog and all kinds of good things. So naming beers is particularly fun. Well, that's why I get a kick out of Six Point is that they name their beers, and then down in little print they tell whether it's an ale or a porter or something. It's more the name of the beer that they're marketing. And another good thing about following the marketing of beers, how they come up with names. Mersey, once again, Zunko are brewery based in Hartpool. Their flagship beer is Northern Hellas. Wow, now that would be an interesting beer to brew. Whoa, okay, and they're in Hartpool. Thank you very much. POOL. Excellent, excellent. Dan, ales are easier to brew, yes, but there was a lager brew pub in Union Square. Oh, yes, was that Union Square? Heartland Brewing Company, I do believe. And yes, they were there and then went down to South Street Seaport. They opened up a place in Midtown as well. But the brewery was there in Union Square. Yes, quite definitely on the west side of Union Square, right next to, oh, was it Blue Ribbon? It might have been. But there was an aqua grill right on the corner. And I spent many days. Farmer John's Porter, was it? I do believe from Heartland. There was was that possibly Zip City? Zip City with Kirby Shire was the brewer there. No, he was the man. He was the money man, and Jeff Silman was the brewer there. Yes, yeah, Zip City, Salme Brewing Company, SALME from Austria, and it's interesting about their brew houses. They don't sell them to you. They kind of, it's like being in a co-op. You get them, and then if things don't work out, they take them back. And if I remember right, the Austrian government took over the lease on that, and when Zip City was pouring their beer down the sewers when they closed. They stayed open for another year. I think the Austrian government kind of ran it as their own private club. Well, not private club, but a club. But that was quite a place. That was quite. Jeff Silman was quite a brewer too. He was very interesting. The mustache and the elan. He did some pretty good beers there. I also remember. Oh, there was another brewer who went on to New England Brewing Company. Oh, Peter, the brain's going. But anyway, so yes, that was quite. Zip City was quite a place. Named after a place that was in literature, and oh boy, it was short-lived. Yeah, it only lasted like about. I seem to remember it being in the 90s, 90. Well, it died when the economy went into the tank in the 80s. So yeah, it had to have been mid 80s, to late 80s, and that was it. Tom, a lager, in contrast, he says, is like a string quartet. It needs to be seamless composition. Yes, it needs to be a seamless composition. That's very true. When you're brewing a lager, as it has just been said here, that there is no margin for error, no margin at all. Oh, Heartland, no, Heartland, yeah. They've gone to contract if they're still around. I haven't been in Manhattan for 4 months now, so I don't know. And I'm going to have to, if I'm going to look, I'm going to Google it up. But Heartland, I don't. I think they went to. I don't think they quite died the death of a rag doll, but it's not what it was. Definitely not what it was. It's interesting to look at the history of small breweries in in New York alone. In the 80s, yeah, in the 80s, I think there were 13 or 14 brew pubs or breweries in New York City, and they were all in Manhattan. And today, I think there's 40, 36, maybe 36 or 40 breweries in New York City, and none of them are in Manhattan. So the dynamic has certainly changed. It is an interesting thing to follow for sure. I'm sure it had to do with rents. I'm sure it had to do with the expansion in New York, particularly in Manhattan in the 80s and 90s, and the bubbles that happened. That's for sure. But again, that's why for me, it's so much fun to be a professional barfly and a journalist, because following all of this and having lived through some of the events, such as the opening of the Manhattan Brewing Company, back when brewmaster Garrett Oliver, who's now with the Brooklyn Brewing Company, started out with Wrigley and some of the other kids. It's been a lot of fun. The people alone, the breweries alone, and the dynamics, the excitement, that I think of trying new things. And that has been one of the interesting things about brewing in the United States since 1974, has been the interest in changing, the interest in trying new things. Phil Markowski has, let's see, I'll bring back Phil. He's not dead yet. Do you remember the one on Houston Street? They actually had draft work. Yeah, that was the Manhattan Brewing Company. It was in a old Con Ed substation, and there were huge windows, and the shutters were covered with copper, and they took them down and turned them into communal tables, all copper clad. Yeah, that was an amazing little brewery. There was only one small problem. They started out well. They started out really well, doing simple things. They did, I think, three styles of beer: a porter or a stout, an amber, and a lighter ale. And they only had sandwiches and that type of food. And it was communal tables, and it was a real hoot. And then they tried to get a little further, and they tried to raise the price points, and I was in there once for a business lunch with one of the advertising people from Beverage Media, and I took him there to show him what a brewery was like. And Big George was his name, and we ordered food at the bar, and the entree came before the appetizer, and George, he had a short fuse, and he almost went over the bar to the bartender, and I pulled him back. I said, take it easy, George. And we complained to the manager, and the manager said, well, that's the way it is. So that's kind of my comment on what happened to the Manhattan Brewing Company. It also turned into, I think, Nacho Papas for a while, and then it died the death of a rag doll. Tom, Peter, do I remember the original Thomas Kemper Brewery in the 80s from Seattle? Thomas Kemper, their craft lagers were special. Kemper rings a bell, but when we're talking the 80s, I didn't get a chance to get out to the West Coast except for a visit to the hop fields that Anheuser-Busch took us out. It was one of those press trips. So, no, I would like to have. Dan, I thought the two huge horses they had in the stable were hoot. Yeah, they two up there. Mersey Beat said that the one of the breweries up there delivers Samuel Smith's delivers it in a horse-drawn dray, and Manhattan Brewing Company tried delivering their kegs in a horse-drawn dray too, but I think maybe possibly the sanitation problems outweighed the marketing look. And can you imagine trying to maintain two horses in that stable? That must have been a real thrill as well. Yo, oh boy, that was interesting back then. Let's see. I tell you, I really appreciate everyone being here today. This is quite remarkable. I thank you all for the thumbs up, because a thumbs up is it really, it's like a writer finding out that someone actually read their article, and now it's this way. It's a little bit more instantaneous as to the appreciation of what I'm doing. And again, I thank you all for showing up. For those of you who have not subscribed yet, please subscribe. The old thumbs up and the old alert bell down there, and you won't miss any of the presentations. And for those of you who are watching at a later date, you missed all the good conversation here unless you were able to see it. And if you are, you can see what fun we've had today. Let's see. Mersey, Samuel Smith's horses are from the adjoining farm. Now that's a adjoining farm. The Samuel Smith horses are from the adjoining farm, which brings me to ask is I can only imagine that the brewery uses the spent grain to feed the, pardon me, or grant me executive clemency, that's used the spent grain to feed the horses and as well to fertilize the soil. A lot of breweries do that with their spent grain, and that way it's the farmers can pick it up. They don't have to pay for the disposal of it. It's certainly recycling in the best of ways, and that I think is truly, again, adapting, adjusting, and overcoming. It's something that I think we do as human beings rather. When we do it rather well. When we don't do it, well, when we don't do it, we don't do it, and it's not thinking. And thinking is a little bit is difficult. It really is. Thinking about beer is not the simplest thing in the world. Thinking about problems are not simple. I'll leave the problems at that. Most breweries in the UK send their grain to farms, mostly pig farms. See there, that is an interesting thing. Pig farms now, that's good. Dan Freeman, I thought Two Draft Horses in Manhattan was an acronym, but there was a place that sold live chickens and rabbits just a block away. Yes. Oh, yes, the live animal market. Oh, Spring Street. Yes, yes, Spring Street. Because no Broome, because the Broome Street Bar and Grill was right there. And yes, West Broadway, Broome Street, and down Broome Street was the Chicken and Rabbits. Oh, we're talking about the 70s now. Yeah, the 19s. Oh boy, New York in the 1970s. This place was a real rat hole. Yeah, and that was why, being a 21-year-old, I thought it was the most exciting thing in the world to be here. Although we're in Brooklyn, I was in Manhattan, so that's the difference. Oh, yeah, definitely. Oh boy, the 16. So that would be seven. I moved to New York in '76. Over 30, almost 40. I don't like to do math. No, no, don't do the math for me, please. Again, that's when I moved to New York. I had a dark beard. Oh, time flies. Where does it go? It goes with the beer. Oh, well, folks, I really appreciate this. It is getting on to the top of the hour, close to well 51. This is one of the longest runs we've had. I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank you all for helping out with the tasting and chatting, and look forward to Friday when we try out the Samuel Smith Organic, and um, after that we've got some surprises. I'm sure I've already mentioned some of them, and we will persevere. All of you have a good night. Let's see, Dan Freeman. I grew up in Minnesota, reading New York Magazine. Uh, New York Magazine when Clay Felker, and I can't remember the editor's name, but oh boy, when New York Magazine started out, everybody was in there. Pete Hamill, Jimmy Breslin, not Gloria Steinem. Oh wow, those were the days. Yes, they were. And oh, now I sound like what's that song? Glory Days. No, no, they were good days, but we've got some great days coming. After this pandemic is over, we got some great days coming, guys. So stay with me. Good to see you all. Cheers. And here's to tomorrow.